Hi developers, once again this is Ron and welcome to our second video. In our last video, we set up our development environment and got everything ready for building our REST API. Today, we're diving deeper into the process. We'll create schemas to define our data structure, controllers to handle the business logic, and routers to manage our API routes. Plus, the exciting part is that by the end of this video, we'll create a post route to add new articles to our database. I hate to keep you waiting, so let's get started. Now that we are done setting up our database, let us now create a schema for our data. Now to do this, let us first create a folder. Let us give this folder a name of models. After that, let's create a file inside this models folder and name it articlemodel.js. Inside this file, the first thing that we're going to do is to import the Mongoose module. This module will going to help us interact with our database easily. To do that, let us create a constant variable and name it Mongoose. And then let us require the Mongoose module using the require method. Now that we are done importing the Mongoose module, let us now create a reference to the schema constructor. Create a constant variable and name it schema. Then let us assign mongoose.schema to this variable. Now let us define a schema structure for our article database. Let me just add a comment for this. Now to start with, let us create a constant variable and let's name it article schema. Let us assign this with a new schema, and after that, we will define the structure and rules for our document. Inside this, let us place an opening and closing curly braces. Inside this schema, let us define the fields and attributes that our data should have. To do this, let us start with the title of our article. This should be followed by a colon and an opening and closing curly braces. After that, let us set the data type of this field. To do that, let us use the keyword type followed by colon. For the title, the data type should be string. This should be followed by a comma, and then let's set the required into true. That makes this title field mandatory. Another property that I would like to add is the trim, and let us set this into true. This will remove leading and trailing spaces from the title field. After the title, let us create the field and attributes for the content. The type should be a string as well, and the required should be set into true. For the author, we're basically going to do the same. The type should be string and the required should be set into true. Finally, let us create a created@ field in order for us to document the time of creation of this data. For this one, the type should be date. And the default value should be date.now. Now that we are done defining our schema, let us now create a model from the schema. To do this, let us just simply create a constant variable and name it article. Now, let us assign a method into this article variable mongoose.model. This model method will accept two arguments. First, we have the article string that represents the name of our model. For the second argument, let us pass in the article schema structure. This schema structure is the one that we have created a while ago. Finally, we can now export this module that we have created so that we can use it later on. To do this, let us simply type module that exports. Then let's assign the article model that we have created. Now that we are done creating a module that defines our schema structure, let us now proceed on creating our article controller. But before that, I originally planned on placing our files inside the backend folder that I have created a while ago, but since I pretty much place everything outside or within this REST API folder, let us now delete this folder. Now let's create a folder and name it controllers. Inside this folder, let's create a new file and let's name it articlecontroller.js. Within this controller, the first thing that we're going to do is to import the model that we have created here in the article model.js. So that, let us create a constant variable article. And then let's require the model. Inside this method, let us pass in a string of the directory of our schema model. Let us just type double dot followed by a forward slash. And then let us type or select models to refer to the models directory. And lastly, the article model. No need to add .js. Let me just add a comment. Now that we have imported the article model structure, we can now fully use the article structure that we have created in this file, this article that we have exported. The next thing that we're going to do is to require the mongoose library. And to do that, let's create a constant variable and name it mongoose. And let us just simply require the mongoose library. Let us just place an equal sign here. Now let's create an asynchronous function expression that handles incoming requests. Then let's name this create article. This article should handle two parameters, the request and the response. To do this, let's create a constant variable. Let's name this create article, followed by an equal sign, and this process is a synchronous function, so let's add async. Then this function should handle two arguments, the request and the response. After that, let us throw a function. Since we're going to create or post a new article into our database, this function will serve as a controller for creating a new article inside our application. But right now, it is throwing us an error. I think the culprit is in here. There should be no h in the async keyword. Now remember that the composition or structure of our request is the title, content, and author. So what we're going to do is destructure this request. To do this, let us type cons, and then let's extract the title, content, and author of our request body. We're basically going to follow the structure that we have created when we created our article schema in here. In here we have the title, content, and the author. This should be followed by an equal sign and the request.body. We're basically destructing this body of request. Now let's create a try and catch block. This will handle potential errors and handle exceptions that might occur during the execution of this function. Within the try block, we're going to create a new article document that uses the Mongoose model article that we have created. Let me just add a comment on this one. Let us also add a catch block in here. Now let us pass in an error parameter in this block. And now let's proceed back to the try block and create a constant variable and name it article. This should be followed by an equal sign and an await keyword because remember that this function is an asynchronous function, so it may take a little time. This is then followed by the article model that we have created, and then let's attach a method create into this model. This method will handle arguments, and that is the title, content, and author that we have destructed in line number 6. Then let us send the response status 201. This indicates that our article creation is successful. Let us also send back the article to the client in a JSON format. Let us pass this article. Now let's proceed to the catch block. Now, if an error occurs during the article creation, we will send an error code 400 back to the client and a JSON response with an error message. And we are actually almost done with our controller, and the only thing that is left to do is to export this function expression create article that we have created. To do this, let us type module.exports followed by an equal sign. This should be followed by an opening and closing curly braces, and then this create article that we just created. Finally, we are done in our create article controller. This controller handles post requests and extract request data to create a new article using Mongoose. And then after that, it returns an appropriate HTTP response. Now that we are done in creating our article controller, the next step that we're going to do is to set up a route that listens. Now inside this file, what we're going to do is to import the create article function. But before that, let us first import the express.js framework. This will allow us to create and manage routes, middleware, and HTTP functions. Now let us import the create article. Let us type const, followed by an opening and closing curly braces. This will be followed by an equal sign and the require method. Inside this, we will pass in an argument, which is the directory of our createArticle function. To do this, let us type cons and name this router. This will be then followed by an equal sign and then an express.router method. Finally, since our goal is to create a new article, we're going to define a route for handling HTTP post requests. To do this, let us type router followed by a period and then the post method. This will handle an argument which is a /URL and the createArticle function. This will invoke the create function that we have imported in the line number 2. Additionally, this will listen for post request at the root URL /. When a post request is made to this endpoint, it invokes the createArticle function, which is responsible for handling the creation of new articles. Finally, we can now export this router so that we can use it in our server. And we are now done with the creation of our router and controller for our post method. Later on, we're going to add different kinds of method for these routers and controllers like deleting, getting, and editing article data. But for now, let us now proceed with our server. For our server, let's create a new file in our root folder and let's name it server.js. To start with our server, let us first load our environment variables from our .env file. To do this, let us just simply use the require method and pass in the argument .env. This will be followed by a .config method, and this will allow us to access our environment variables using the process.env. Next, after that, we're going to import two essential Node.js modules. First, we have the express.js framework, which simplifies the process of defining routes, handling HTTP requests and responses, and implementing middleware. The second one is the Mongoose, which provides an elegant and structured way to interact with MongoDB database using JavaScript. Now that we are done importing the Express and Mongoose module, let us now import the article routes that we have created a while ago from this file, articleroutes.js. To do this, let us just type cons and name it article routes. After this, we will invoke or create an instance of our Express app. For this, let us just create a constant variable and name it app, followed by an equal sign and the Express method. Once we have this app instance, we can start defining routes, middleware, and other configurations to build our web application or API. Now, using this app and that use method, let us create a middleware. Inside this, let us pass in express.json. This will help us automatically open packages that are in the JSON format. We need this because our incoming request bodies are in JSON format. So it simplifies the process of working with JSON data sent by the clients and allows you to easily process and respond to requests that include JSON encoded information. From here onwards, the process seems a little complicated or complex for beginners, so let's add comments to help us understand the process better. First, this is the middleware that tells Express to parse incoming HTTP request bodies as JSON. And this middleware simplifies the process of extracting and working with data. After this, let us create another middleware for logging incoming requests. For this, let us again use app and .use method. Inside this, we will throw a callback function as an argument. Now, since this middleware will log incoming requests, this callback function will handle three parameters: the request, the response, and the next. Inside this function, we will simply log in the console the request path and the request method coming from the client. This is then followed by a next to end this process or move to the next middleware. The next thing that we're going to do is to use the article routes that we have set in the article routers. For this, we will again use app.use. And then we will pass in our base path as an argument. This will be /API/articles inside an apostrophe. We will also pass in here the router that we have created. Finally, we will now connect to the database. To establish a connection into our database, let us use the mongoose and then followed by a .connect method. This will then contain our connection string URI. Let us just type process.env because this is stored in our .env file, followed by .mongo_URI. If you can remember, we stored this Mongo URI in this file that we have created during our setup. Because of this, we can just use this Mongo URI and transfer it into this server.js file that we are creating right now. Next, we will use .then. This is a promise-based callback that executes when the database connection is successfully established. Along with this then, we will also use .catch. This part handles then we will pass a callback function. we will use app.listen in order for us to listen to a specific port number. And again, we will use process.env followed by that port. What will happen here is that this app will listen to a specific port number that is set in here in this .env file. Along with the port number, we will also attach a callback function into this method. And what we will do is we will just log into the console that we are connected to the database and listening to the port number that we have selected. And we are actually almost done with our method. All we need to do is to attach a callback function into this catch method. This will handle an error, so let's place an error into this callback function. Then let us log the error into the console. Alright, now that we are done in setting up our router, controller, and server, let us now proceed in running this server. To do this, in the terminal, let us type node, space, followed by server.js. And there you have it. Our server is connected to the database and listening to port 4000. But let's say, for example, we need to change in our files. Let's say, for example, instead of listening to port, let's add port number into this. In order for these changes to reflect, we need to cancel our server and restart it again. Well, this is fine, but in the long run, this can be a tedious process. There we go, it now says port number. Now, in order for us to automatically restart our server every time we make changes, all we need to do is install nodemon. Let me just cancel this process again and clear the terminal. To install nodemon, let us just type npm space followed by install space -g space nodemon. Now to run our server, we can just simply type nodemon space server.js. Now nodemon will automatically restart our server whenever we make changes. To demonstrate this, let's try changing this console.log. And you can see that the changes automatically reflected in our server. Now this alone is actually a fully functioning backend server. Now in order for us to test our REST API or post creation of our article, we need to have a front end, or we can just use Postman. Just download and install Postman into your local machine. Postman is a popular and widely used tool for testing and interacting with API. Once you're done downloading and installing Postman, it should look like this. To start working with Postman, all we need to do is click the plus icon or button indicating that we would like to create a new request. After that, we will just simply select the HTTP method that we would like to make, or in this case, the post that indicates that we would like to create an article. We will then type our API endpoint. This will be localhost, our port number 4000, followed by a /, then API / articles /. After this, let us switch to the body tab. We will then select the raw option, then change this from text to JSON. Then we will just type our body of requests in a JSON format. Inside these curly braces, let us type title inside the quotation. This will be then followed by a colon and a sample title inside the quotation. And then we will add a comma at the end. We will finally, once we're done, we can just simply click the send button to send this API request to our server. And that throws us an error. And there you have it. We have successfully created an article using our post API. Now, I have mentioned a while ago that this is a fully functioning backend server that saves data in our MongoDB database. To prove this, let's go over our MongoDB tab and proceed to the Pros Collections tab. And there we have it. Application, configuring routes, and connecting to our MongoDB database. On top of that, we have also demonstrated creating an article using the HTTP post method. In our next videos, we will dig deeper into these RESTful APIs by getting a single data or all datas, editing datas, and deleting a single data. We hope to see you again in our next video.